House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Kanwaljit Singh Bakshi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute on the second reading of Enhancing Identity Verification and Border Process Legislation Bill. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I would like to thank the officials for their support during the Select Committee process. And there were few issues which were raised during the Select Committee process, as the Minister has just alluded to be tested and make sure that the recommendations are made. And the paramount of this bill is to have safety of people. And that is what we have been doing in past 8.5 years. National is strengthening how the frontline agencies verify the identity of offenders and share the information across the public protection agencies. Mr. Speaker, there was an inquiry after the escape of Philip Jones Smith, who escaped from the prison and escaped to Brazil, and then he was tracked down from there and brought back. And then a government inquiry was started, which recommended, and some of the issues which were raised in that inquiry, to fix that, this bill was introduced to the Parliament. The bill contributes to the government's priority of delivering better public services by reducing crime and reoffending. This is again part of the safer communities, what this government has been doing. Mr. Speaker, this omnibus bill, which aims to strengthen the ability of the government agencies to perform their functions related to law enforcement, including the detention of restricted patients and special patients who are under special care, and they are serving their sentence also. Some of the recommendations which were made by the Select Committee, I would like to highlight those so that we can understand why these recommendations were made. First of all, I would like to touch upon the collection of the biometric information from the offenders on the community work. The bill as introduced did not include that the community workers serving as the offenders serving on community work should be having their biometrics collected. But we found it will be consistent for the management of the offenders to make sure that when offender comes up for the community work, the person is the right person, not somebody else is representing for their service. So that is why the Select Committee thought it will be important that the people who are serving their sentences through the community work, they should be entitled to give the biometrics. Another point which came up during the Select Committee process was that if somebody resists to give their biometric samples, then it can be considered as an offense. And a 3 months imprisonment, that is the maximum which can be imposed, and a $1,000 maximum fine can also be imposed in case the person is not ready to give his biometric samples. Mr. Speaker, collection of the biometric information from prisoners and for the wider purpose, as I mentioned, that it is important that not only the management, the identification and the management of the prisoner is equally important for corrections to do. This amendment would ensure that prisoner use the same standard, and plus, Mr. Speaker, I would also like to say that it also standardizes that same type of biometric samples are collected at all stages. So this amendment would ensure that the prisons use the same standard of identity verification so that it is used in other part of criminal justice system. It will be consistent and there won't be any difference. So when a prison arrives in the police station or where in the prison, then the same kind of biometrics is collected at all the stages. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to highlight that the recommendation from the Select Committee that when somebody is trying to travel overseas, particularly who is in the community service, they don't have to go and ask for a permission that they want to travel overseas unless the prohibition officer gives permission. However, we understand it is unnecessary and inefficient to include in the border alert process the offenders who pose to be low risk of flight. In practice, prohibition officer prohibits only small portion of offenders on supervision from leaving New Zealand. For an offender to be prohibited from traveling, they would need present a risk such as issues caused by absence from the drug and alcohol rehabilitation program. So a probation officer can give the permission to travel if he feels that the prisoner or the convict is fit and to travel and there is no major risk in any manner. So, Mr. Speaker, we also recommended that the information sharing between the agencies in judiciary and police and the border customs is also important, that they should be consistent on the they should be on the same page so that they have information about everyone who is trying to go overseas. And if they are convicted of any reason, they should be able to identify the person and can be alerted to the corrections that this person is trying to escape from New Zealand unless they have got the permission. And it was this select committee these select committee recommendations were recommended by majority. The Green Party had their own minority view. They had some concerns about this, but overall, the majority of the members of the select committee, they were...
I'm sorry to interrupt the honourable member. The time has come for me to leave the chair. Members, this debate is interrupted and set down for resumption next sitting day. And the House stands adjourned until 2 p.m. on Tuesday, 27 June 2017. Have a good weekend. Good evening.